I am particularly excited today to share with you because I feel like an opening and an awareness has come to me from some of my deeper inner work, and I feel like it led me to some really important inner information about being a woman and sacred cycles. And I know we've started that conversation with the last two YouTubes that we did. And that was inspired by the work of an English homeopath who teaches for a school, a homeopathic school in England, named Taryn Jacobs. And Taryn started me on the path of exploring the menstrual cycle and how that affects us, and the oneness of that cycle with so many aspects, like the relationship of the seasons, like the relationship of the seasons to foods that we eat. So many cycles of the seasons inside of each 28-day cycle, or whatever your cycle happens to be, because every woman doesn't have a 28-day cycle who's still menstruating. We have our uniquenesses, and so we're going to really honor those uniquenesses as we get into this discussion today. And she led me to the work of, I think, one of her students, actually. And there's two of them. One is postmenopausal, and her name is Alexandra Pope. And then Jani Hugo Wurlitzer is still a menstruating woman. And the two of these women got together and they formed an amazing partnership. They've been teaching together internationally. They're both, I believe, from England, or possibly one has lived or is living right now in Australia. But their book is called Wild Power, and they have a new one coming out shortly called Menopause. And in this, they are doing a deep dive and exploration into self-awareness through looking at our cycle in relationship to summer and fall and winter and spring. I should probably start with spring because that's where the cycle basically begins. And then putting that in conjunction with the moon. And many of you know that I've talked about the moon quite extensively in the past in relationship to women's cycles. So today, what I want to do is take the information that we discussed in the first two YouTubes about the follicle stimulating cycle, or the follicular phase, and the luteal phase, and add to that the awareness of the seasons and practices and ways to deal with issues that can come up for us around that. So we're going to be exploring the relationship of the seasons. So day one of the cycle, or when a woman begins to bleed, which is day one, is the beginning of spring. It would be the new moon if we're looking at it from the moon phase. But women don't necessarily have their cycle in relationship to the moon. Ancients did, and women who tend to live together in a home where they're spending time outdoors and connecting with nature, they will tend to have their cycle starting at the new moon with their bleed, and then going to full moon, which we've talked about many times before, would be the time of ovulation. And in this case, we would be going from spring to summer. So the first 14 days of the cycle would be divided into the first 7, which would be spring, the second 7 would be summer, and then the third 7 would be autumn, and the fourth 7 would be winter. And that takes us all the way around the 4 seasons. Now, each one of these seasons has very unique qualities. And so we're going to talk about those qualities and what they mean to us if we're honoring them, and practices that we can do that will help us to get in touch with them. Because it's through getting in touch with our own inner experience of these cycles that we can come to know ourselves more deeply and the gifts that are uniquely our own, and how we can support other sisters in their process. And if you are a man who loves women, how you can more deeply understand the unusual craziness that appears to happen with us as women if we're not subjugating those experiences, pushing them down and not allowing them to come up or be expressed. And I want to tell you that it's those subjugations and the dishonoring of our fullness of who we are as women that actually causes most of our hormonal problems, that causes and contributes to profoundly things like menstrual pain, things like having issues with PCOS, where we have this overabundance of testosterone. It's like we're trying so hard to live in the masculine energy that our body just goes along and supports us with that by producing an excess of testosterone. And then we have all kinds of challenges to our feminine energies, and that shows up in our cycle. So there's PCOS, which is a major problem for women these days because we have so dishonored our feminine energy that lives within us and the way that our body wants to express itself. And we're going to look at that a little bit more in depth here in a few minutes. And the other, really big problem that many women face has to do with how there's an overgrowth of tissue in the body that brings about tremendous pain as the tissues from the uterus spread outside of the uterus and connect to colon or other organs and create an enormous amount of pain for women. And that again is this incredible honoring of only one part of our female cycle that's our most masculine part of our cycle. And that's the summer phase. That's when we're outgoing, that's when we want to create, that's when we want to do, that's when we want to connect with people and be really involved in making things happen in the world. But the other cycles have different aspects for us, like the autumn. After summer comes autumn, and autumn tends to be a time when we're most critical of ourselves, when we edit and judge what we've done during the summertime and question whether we've done a good enough job with the creation that we've done and experienced during the summertime. And as we move through that inner critic, we move to the time of winter. And winter is the opposite of our go, 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 green light energy of summer. Winter is the time when we basically have a red light. And oftentimes, if we won't allow the red light, it's time to go into a more peaceful, quiet, internal state. The body will create pain so that we have no choice but to actually stop completely and have to go to bed, lay down, or whatever, because the body is so desperately trying to communicate to us what it needs. And the healing process is typically not one of comfort. The healing process requires things like fevers and breaking down of fluids, so mucus and pus and all these sorts of things, an excessive bleed, discomfort as the body releases toxins. Rudolf Steiner talks about how bleeding for women is a way of getting rid of acid toxins. And it's one of the reasons why women don't have many of the diseases that men have until menopause. Women don't generally have to deal with heart attacks and things of that nature if they're having a healthy bleed, because their body is getting effectively rid of these acid toxins that men don't have an option to get rid of with the kind of ease that we do because of the gift of our bleeding, of that cycle, that portion of our cycle, when we're in the winter or the last 7 days of our cycle. So it's really quite an interesting time. I should say from day 14 to day 28. That's when we're really going into the winter, the slowing down, the darkness, and when it's time for us to actually discover some of those deeper, hidden parts of ourselves, to be able to honor, to respect, to own, and see what the gift in some of these deeper feelings might be. It's the time when we might feel resentful. It's the time when we might judge ourselves intensively. It's the time when we might question really deeply our actions. And it's a time when dreams may speak to us of ancestral issues in metaphors and provide us with an opportunity to do some awareness healing. Awareness is the key word here. And so the primary practice for us as women is to get some type of a journal. I recommend one of the beautiful kinds of daytimers that are available typically through people who teach meditation. There will be beautiful photographs in it, beautiful statements, maybe some Rumi poetry. But they almost always have the new moon and full moon phases of the moon on the dates that they are each month, so that it helps us to connect with the moon as well. And our job would be to know what day we are in our cycle. So we start counting day 1 from the first day of the bleed, if you are bleeding. If you aren't bleeding, then we'll simply use the moon, and day 1 for you will be the new moon. And we're going to look each day at what are the unique sensations of the day, and just make a quick little note. It could be 3 or 4 words. Like a typical spring day might be tenderness, new beginnings, gentleness, openings. A few words for summer might be excited and energetic and passionate and out there, outgoing. Some days, some words, some descriptive words for the time of autumn might be words like critical, slowing down, questioning, internal, beginning to go inside. And for winter might be tired, stopping, sleepy, intense dreaming, inner questioning, dreaminess. Those might be some types of words for our winter time. And out of this, if we continue to make this a daily practice over the years, we'll begin to see that there is a theme for us that comes true for each of these seasons, whether we be menstruating or not, whether we're using the moon or we're using the cycle. And one of the most important things for us to be aware of is energy from our adrenal glands. And our adrenals, they love a few special qualities. The adrenals love to be rested. They want to go to bed at the same time. They want to wake up at the same time. They love continuity, and they love being able to know that they can count on things to have a sameness. So they love routine. So being focused on taking time to rest and go deep is something that the adrenals definitely need during the winter time. And the reason why supporting the adrenals is so important is that when our ovaries stop producing hormones, the adrenals can take over and help to produce more progesterone in particular for us. And we need that in order to support our health. Our estrogen is our growing side of things. It puts weight on us. If we have an excess of estrogen, we'll have excess fluid and edema. It tends to create more fat if we have excess estrogen around the belly. And I think a big part of why we're seeing so much obesity in our culture these days is because women are not being encouraged through our culture and our society to take time for anything other than the estrogenic side, which is the productive side, the making things happen. So when we're in the estrogen side, it's a great time to be active and make things happen and work in the office and take on new projects and take, control and make activities happen and do a lot with your children and all that sort of thing. But then there's no place in our culture for a woman to take the deep internal time to connect with other women, to go into quiet places, to look at the emotions, to look at the feelings, to look at the deeper inner wisdom, instead of being active all the time. So we are encouraged to do things like run and do triathlons and things like that. And if you're training for something like that, we don't take into consideration that it's not the time to train for that during part of our month, part of the cycle, when it's time for us to be resting and going deep. And we push ourselves, we set goals, and we force ourselves to do them rather than listening to what our body actually is asking from us, what it needs. We basically tell our bodies to shut up, and then the body needs to communicate with us what it needs in order to be healthy. And the only way it has left to do that is through creating discomfort that won't allow us to do the activities that are harmful to us. And to me, that's primarily what illness is. It's the body saying, hey, listen to me, I'm here, I know what I need. I know what will give you strength and longevity and wisdom and awareness. And so it's this awareness process of this cycle that helps us to be whole and complete and have the energy that we need, like from the adrenals and the thyroid, that can support us in being strong and healthy and self-aware and attuned and able to have some real wisdom to offer to those in our world. I find it really interesting that Sadhguru, who is someone I have the deepest respect for, says that one of the qualities that we all ultimately want to acknowledge in ourselves, being us male or female, is being a mother to the world. And what does that really mean? But nourishing whatever through what we're doing in the world. Having true compassion It's not about having a woman's body, a mother's body, but it's imbibing that energy. And none of us would be here if it wasn't for a mother. So all of us carry the energy of the mother who carried us in the womb. So even though we may be in a male body rather than a female body, there's something in us that knows that energy of being nourished, being fed, no matter what was going on for the mother, emotionally, externally, whatever. There was that peace that transcends it all, that is that energy of being the mother. And if we're all able to be a mother to the world, that inclusiveness that includes everyone as part of our family, then we couldn't possibly do harm to anyone because they're all part of our family or self. So it would be to harm another would be like to harm ourselves. And to do something that's beneficial for one makes a difference for all. And that awareness is just so profound to me when I think about the energy of the Divine Mother. Because many of us have our deepest traumas in the way we were mothered, because our mothers weren't mothered with that kind of wisdom either, nor were their mothers, nor were their mothers. So we have this opportunity to do this profound healing through inclusiveness, and by beginning to bring to awareness through this process of just writing down a few words each day and the day of our cycle, to come to a deeper awareness about what we're about. And if we can find the time to give to ourselves during the winter phase, the last days before the period begins, and the spring, the beginning of spring, when our period is just beginning. Many women for the first day or two have discomfort and want to deeply rest. But even if you don't have discomfort, it's a time to slow down and tune in, because it's a time when we're more attuned than almost any other time of the deeper places inside that we might want to hide from ourselves, because they're not the go, go, go energy that is so appreciated and applauded in our culture today. So I'd like to take a few minutes and go through each one of the phases, the seasons, if you will, and talk about what we could do to support them. Because we have a mini year in every month as women as we go through our cycle. So from day 1 to day 7, we're in a phase where we're experiencing spring. And spring is this very, very tender time. It's openings, it's new beginnings. There's generally hopefulness that arises in the springtime. And spring gets very beautiful and very exciting. But in the very beginning of spring, especially if you have pain in your menstrual cycle, you still really need to be nurtured and taken care of. And we can see this amplified for us in the beginning of new growth of seeds. Because in the beginning, the seed, as it begins to open into 2 new leaves, will still have the seed covering on top of it in the very beginning to protect it until the leaves are strong enough on their own to push the seed off, and then we have the leaves themselves being exposed to the energy of the sun. But in the beginning, the seed is not, the leaves are not ready for the sun. They're too delicate. And that's what's happening for us in the very beginning days of our cycle, of the first couple days of our bleed. We're still in a very delicate phase, needing to be receiving our gentle care, like that of the seed, protecting the leaves before they get exposed to the brightness of the light of the sun. I just flashed on another really beautiful metaphor for this, where Rudolf Steiner talks about when a baby is born, you want to be so careful not to have them in bright light because their eyes have been protected by the mother's womb. And the light that the baby sees is through the mother's womb and the protection of it. So we want to be very, very gentle in how we approach the experience of light and seeing to a newborn. And so he recommends using layers of silk, red and blue silk, in like over the area where the baby is sleeping or maybe on the mother's body, so that the eyes are not exposed to the brightness of the light, but little by little you remove a layer of silk and the baby's eyes get acclimated to the light of the world, bit by bit, because it's been so completely protected before. So in a way, that complete protection in the womb would be the winter, and the spring would be when the baby is born and still has that beginning protection. But unfortunately, it is a rare baby whose eyes have been protected from that kind of light. And therefore, the beginning vision that the baby has may not be a safe vision. And therefore, the child may grow, or we probably have all grown, with certain degrees of not feeling safe to fully see what is because of the original pain of the bright light, particularly if we were born in hospitals, that's shining on us in that first experience. So everything that Steiner talks about, welcoming the child to the world, has to do with this gentle, slow, kind of seed-like protection over the emerging leaves, over the emerging new life coming from the womb. So the metaphors just go so deep, the oneness of everything that is going on inside of our bodies it's just amazing as we look deeper into nature's metaphors for us about it all. Of course, the other metaphor is that in the springtime, we're beginning to have this new emerging green life, and this young sprouts, like, I think I've done some YouTube's foraging in my backyard in the beginning of spring, because almost every little plant, every young plant, is tender and more delicious in its very first days. You can eat almost every little green thing that comes up, but it's a great time to do things like, to begin to find things like dandelions and green bitters. It's like the body loves those in the beginning of spring. And that beginning opening of the fresh foods that are just beginning to show up as we continue to be nourished by the foods of winter, the broths and the stews and the foods that are more warming. And as we move deeper into the spring, then there's more foods for us to eat that are larger greens, like the full-grown leaves of the dandelions and the lettuces, and so many herbs are available. I love that dill is available in the spring. Here in Austin is one of the few times we actually have lettuces that we can pick and eat from our garden because it's not too hot. The sun hasn't burned them all out and caused them to bolt. And then we move into the summer. And in the summer, we have, all of the fruits, and so many of the vegetables are are beginning, and it's a time when we can eat a lot more fresh foods, but continue to bring with us some of the nourishing foods in. And during that summertime, it's that creative, outgoing time where we start to look at perhaps wild dancing and releasing through shaking and jumping and making things happen and taking on new projects and doing lots of visiting with others and partying and things like that. That's the time for it during the summer. And towards the end of the summer phase, just before ovulation, we see that that is the time when women are the juiciest and when people find us the most attractive, because that energy of the ovulation makes us the most attractive, so that we will attract a partner and have babies. It's when our libido is the strongest, when there's just more passion on every level, passion for projects, excitement about what we're doing, and meeting people and connecting and all of that. So that's the time, if we want to honor our cycle the most, that if we're going to sit down with a whole calendar for the month, that's when we want to put in time for parties and meeting with people and going places and doing things and starting new projects and putting a bunch of creative energy into those new projects. That would be the summertime for us. And then we move into fall. And fall is when we take a look back at what did we create during the summertime. And we might notice things that we didn't notice in the frenzy of making things happen. Because we're just beginning to slow down in the fall and honor the beauty of the leaves that are beginning to fall. And we've looked at what we've created in the summer, those leaves, and they're now falling, and now we can look at, how could I have done that better? Is there something I need to learn from what I just did during the summer? So fall begins this reflective time for us, this honoring time for us, where we really explore what we've done in the summer and fine-tune it with our awareness in the fall as we slow down. And some of us can be overly critical of ourselves during that fall time. And by using our awareness process, where we write down the day in our cycle, the day in the moon cycle, and the 4 words that describe what we've just experienced that day, we may find that it is our more critical time, and we've kind of dampened our energy with that natural time for looking back at what we've done and being more of an editing nature. And then as we move into the winter, winter is when there's not as much light, where we tend to need to sleep more, to go deeper, and it's the natural time when we're more parasympathetic, where we have more of a natural meditative state, where we're more internal. But many of us have never allowed ourselves to go there because there's such a huge focus in our culture on accomplishing things on the outer. There hasn't been a great focus on us going internal and deeply experiencing what's going on for us on an emotional and spiritual level. We haven't given ourselves that kind of respect and honor for that part of ourselves because it's just not acknowledged as valuable in our culture. What's acknowledged as valuable is, as if you're going to get into really just plain, like let's say 1950s womanly stuff, is how clean is your house? Have you made all the beds? Have you taken the children to the park? Have you, all the doing type things of the nurturing rather than the internal time maybe taking more time to sit down with the children and read stories and create stories together and feel into creating questions that take the children into honoring their creative impulses with you together, and all snuggling together, and sitting in front of a fire together, or doing things that have more of a slowing down, internalizing kind of an effect. So if we're talking about exercise, for instance, spring would be, like this beginning of opening gently into movement. So we might want to be doing like gentle flow or yin types of yoga, or qigong that's more slow and gentle in its movement, or tai chi. Tai chi might be a perfect thing for spring as far as looking at movement goes. And we could create special music, to make choices of music for the spring that have more of that flowing quality and opening quality and emerging quality that comes with the energy of spring. And with summer, that's when we just really let ourselves go and be active and jumping and dancing and wild and playful, and that's when we might be doing more competitive type things, and where we might be doing incredibly intense activity and really active dancing and jumping and releasing and all that sort of thing. Long bike rides and runs and pushing ourselves to climb, up elevation and mountains and that sort of thing. Whereas we might not want to do that in the beginning of spring. We might want to take gentle walks where we're just attuning ourselves to the oxygen that we're receiving from the trees and the carbon dioxide that we're breathing out to nourish the trees. It's a very different feeling than walking it as hard and fast as we can, to just slowing down and being aware of what's emerging from nature around us. Both are still walking, but very different qualities, eh? That's spring to summer. The fall where we're starting to, get more reflective. That might be a time when we're beginning to move into an even deeper kind of movement where we might be doing more pranayama or mantra work. Mantra is probably even more like it, where we're putting our focus on specific sounds and feeling what those sounds are doing to us and where the energy's moving in the body. That can be a really beneficial thing to do in the fall time, is to be, maybe singing a mantra, or doing one of my favorite practices for bringing balance as we're beginning to enter into a deeper time, which would be the alternate nostril breathing, where we breathe out through the left nostril, breathing in, and then switching over, breathing out through the right nostril and breathing in, and going back and forth and doing this for at least 5 minutes. This has a tendency to bring great balance to the left and right hemispheres of the body and the brain, so that we can enter into this more critical time with more compassion for ourselves. And another really wonderful balancing thing I think we talked about in other YouTubes is the working with the 3 sounds, ah, oo, and which is ah. So ahming or oming, we typically call it oming, but that ahming brings balance to what in Chinese medicine they call the 3 jiaos, where the ah is the area between the navel and the diaphragm. So it's the abdomen, the lower abdomen. And ah helps to bring balance to that area. And ooh brings balance from the diaphragm to the throat. So it's the whole chest area and the three different parts of the lung that get really supported here, but the liver and all of that, and the stomach and the small intestine. And then we move from the throat up to the third eye, and that is the sound. And so by doing some umming for like at least 21 ums, that helps to really settle us in and bring some peace of mind. And there's even research that shows how beneficial this is to people who have PTSD and have experienced intense traumas. This helps to just bring some peace to the system as we enter into the more challenging times, so that we can greet the painful truths with more equanimity and balance. So this is a beautiful thing to do in both fall and in winter, to support our challenge as we start looking at the deeper parts of our ancestral inheritance that may have not been so pretty to look at. So as we're moving into the winter, the type of movement that we want to do is going to be extremely gentle. And many know of something called restorative yoga. And what makes restorative yoga really unique is that you use different props to hold your body in a posture instead of forcing your body into opening. So you're supporting the body in the posture, and you're basically in a relaxed state and resting in the posture while your body is being supported by props, be it pillows or blocks or whatever. And typically you'll take 5 to 10 minutes to just be in that position. And we've talked in the past about doing this, particularly to help people to relax enough so they can fall asleep, where you do this a posture, a restorative posture with all the kinds of pillows and blankets you might need to protect your neck and your head as you lie on the floor and your back, so that you all feel totally comfortable and supported. And you bring your body right to the edge of your bed and bring your knees up over the mattress and your feet onto the mattress, and just lie in that position, being supported completely by your bed and the pillows and blankets underneath you. And there, just allow yourself to breathe and to allow the images to come up, and ask yourself what you're feeling in that position. And let yourself be nurtured in these restorative types of yoga positions. And there's many others besides this particular one, but the idea is that whatever position you're in, there's no stress in it. You just allow yourself to be nurtured and supported. And that's really something that most of us have never gotten enough of, really being nurtured and supported and held so that things are easy for us. They're not filled with stress. So it's a beautiful metaphor for life holding us rather than life pushing us and making things challenging. Challenging is exciting and wonderful during the time of summer, but not during the time of winter, when there's a deep longing to be held and nurtured and warm and cozy. So you can get a sense of what those things might be and what things might be good for you during those times. So this is my introduction for you today on the seasons, and how understanding the seasons and making a commitment to yourself to begin this beautiful self-awareness process of charting your cycle and moon day with your feelings, and beginning to start to see the patterns that show up for you, and allowing the wisdom that's within you to guide how you take care of yourself, and learn that there is this profound wisdom in you that's always speaking, always trying to heal you, always there to support us if we take the time to go inside and listen. And one of the most profound aspects of that, of course, is this female cycle of our menses, and then after the menses, days are over, the moon in itself. So I want to thank you for listening to me today. And if you have an interest in perhaps getting together with a group of women and getting to experience a bit of what the ancient women knew for one another and did for one another as they gathered during their menstrual phase and supported each other in entering into these deep, honest spaces with a container of safety, of the love and support of each other, please let me know, because I'm looking at beginning and opening up a process like this for women who may want to participate together in a deeper exploration of the incredible wisdom that lives inside of us, the incredible power for healing on so many levels that lives inside of us, that most of us have never even thought to explore.